Call to order a meeting for the Normal Town Council for January 18th, 2022. Please call the roll.
Mayor Coos.
Here.
Ms. Lorenz.
Here.
Mr. Nord.
Here.
Ms. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Cummings. Mr. Preston.
Here.
Mr. McCarthy.
Here.
We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have one person wishing to give public comment tonight. That would be Mr. Doug Johnson. So, Mr. Johnson, if you want to come forward and, as a reminder, state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Doug Johnson.
Wait a second.
Hold on. It's not on.
It's not on.
So 1 second here. Alondre's coming up to get you all set. We want to make sure we hear you.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. My name is Doug Johnson, DOUGJOHNSON. I'm the Executive Director of the McLean County Arts Center, which is the official arts agency as designated by the town of Normal, the city of Bloomington, the county of McLean. I also serve on the Board for Arts Alliance Illinois, which is the state's non-governmental arts advocacy group. Additionally, I serve in a number of different capacities, including working with the Arts Alliance in the efforts to have the capital bill passed, which led to $53 million being appropriated for the arts for Illinois. And of those dollars, $1 million will be funneled into the city of Bloomington for their creativity center. I mention those things because the arts are a real engine for our economy and have a vital role that we play. Those of you that have attended the Sugar Creek Arts Festival, which is an event that we co-organize with the town of Normal, have experienced 20,000 people coming to that event over 2 days. According to the economic impact calculator from the Americans for the Arts, that event has an impact of more than $300,000 annually to our community. There is a motion before you to approve public funding for public art in the town. And I spent a long time looking through the documents that were created by the town, as well as looking at the resources that they shared. I really thought that the town did a fabulous job in assembling those documents. And I hope that this body would seriously consider those actions to support public art. One thing that I think is vital and is often missed, when R.J. Scaringe came to town and went to the coffee hound and made the decision to invest in our community, one of the things that was very important is on the walls of both coffee hounds is the work by Roger Harris. Roger taught at the McLean County Arts Center, was a terrific artist. And I think the impact of the arts in that small way has led to a great windfall for our community. And I encourage everyone to seriously consider this support because the public arts is vital. And your support can make a tremendous difference for our entire community. So thank you.
We move to the omnibus agenda. Items considered routine and will be taken with one vote unless a council member would like to pull an item for discussion. Mr. Preston.
I will pull item A.
Move approval.
Second.
Items considered under omnibus tonight are the report to receive and file town of Normal expenditures for payment as of January 12th, 2022, and a resolution authorizing the execution of an intergovernmental agreement with McLean County for centralized booking services. Please call the roll.
Mr. Nord.
Aye.
Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Cummings.
Aye.
Mr. Preston.
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy.
Aye.
Ms. Lorenz.
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. Those items are approved. Item A is an approval of the minutes of the public hearing of January 4th, 2022, and approval of the minutes of the regular council meeting of January 4th, 2022. Mr. Preston.
Move approval.
Second.
Mr. Preston?
I have a procedural question for staff. If there is an item that was approved as part of the minutes of the regular council meeting, and that is an item that I would like to readdress, is that something procedurally that I should do now ahead of the approval of the minutes, or is that something that could be addressed and should be addressed at a later time in this meeting or otherwise?
That is something that should be addressed at a later time, unless you believe that there's an issue with the, I want to say the truth of the minutes, unless you believe that the minutes are inaccurate as to what happened at that meeting, then any other business would be at a later time. If you're talking about a motion to redo the vote, that would be a motion to rescind, which would require us to put that on a future agenda for the Open Meetings Act, because doing that kind of motion would be a final action under the Open Meetings Act. So we would need to have the advanced 48-hour notice and have that put on an agenda. So that would be in something that would go on an agenda like any other agenda item for a future meeting date.
Okay. And
For clarity, a motion to rescind what?
A motion to rescind the vote is.
Thank you. All right.
And a motion to rescind is something that should happen later or should happen now? So I understand.
That would be later. That would be, in fact, it would have to happen at a future meeting after we give advance notice.
Okay.
Further on the minutes, Mr. Nord?
A question regarding that issue. We have tax dollars that are being expended, and if there's a chance that that vote may change, then by pushing this off another couple of weeks, we're now wasting taxpayer
Mr. Nord,
dollars.
you're out of order. We're not going to have that discussion tonight. I think Mr. Day was quite clear on what the process is, and we'll bring that to the next meeting.
All right, I just want to bring that up.
Nor
That's
there is
fiscally
no
irresponsible.
action coming out of approval of the minutes.
Okay. then
You can
I've got
ask
it.
what you want, but Mr. Day has been very clear on our process, and that's the process we'll take.
Okay, I've got another question. If a vote was made on materially false,
Mr. Nord, you're out of order.
is that vote,
Mr. Nord,
Legal.
you are out of order
why is that out of order?
because we are approving the minutes. We're not having a discussion about past council actions.
I've got a request for inquiry.
And your request is denied.
I'd like to appeal.
Appeal.
I appeal the decision of the chair. Can I have a second?
Do we need a vote on that?
Yes.
We have a motion to appeal the decision to not have a discussion about the item having to do, obviously, with the outdoor gym.
That's not my question.
What's your,
My question is, what is the legal status of a vote that was based on materially false information? Could be with any of these votes.
do we need a second for that?
Yes.
Do I have a second?
Can we get clarity as to what it is that, explain exactly where we are in the
Mr.
conversation
Nord,
right now?
and I think you may have a second if you could clearly state your motion again.
It's a question. I would like to know, what is the status of a vote that was taken based upon materially false information?
And so the second would be to allow that question to be asked.
Yes.
I'll second that.
All right. Please call the roll.
Ms. Smith?
No.
If I may, Mayor, what are we voting on specifically?
To allow the question.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Cummings,
No.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
No.
Ms. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Nord,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
No. The motion fails. Further questions on the minutes? Please call the roll.
Ms. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Nord,
No.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Ms. Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
No.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye, the minutes are approved. We move to general orders. First item on general orders is an ordinance rezoning property in the town of Normal having to do with 901 Kern Street. Could I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Is there discussion on this item? Ms. Smith?
Just for clarity purposes, the rezoning of this is going to permit going from a single residence on that property to a duplex and not an apartment complex. Is that correct?
That is a correct statement.
Okay, thank you.
Further on the item? Please call the roll.
Ms. Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Ms. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Nord,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. The ordinance is approved. Item 8 is a resolution conditionally approving a preliminary subdivision plan for Heartland Community College, second edition.
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion on this item. Ms. Cummings?
Yes, Mayor. For items both 8 and 9, I need to be excused from the dais at this time.
Further on this item? Ms. Smith? Then Mr. Nord.
For the record, the plans that have been submitted by Heartland Community College for this second edition, it includes what amounts to a main structure and some supporting buildings. But the bulk of the acreage will be dedicated to agricultural use by Heartland Community College and their students.
I believe so. It doesn't show as being developed, so I think it's status quo. I'll ask, where's Ms. Davison? All right, I'll ask Ms. Davison to come forward and clarify.
That is correct. There's just one building that they would be building. There are some additional residential structures that are out in the agricultural part of the property that aren't being removed at this time, but only one new building is being built.
And because of the amount of land and that single structure, that made it possible to reduce the required number of parking spaces.
Well, the parking portion of the code is based on the size of the building, so the square footage of any building in town has a parking requirement for the most part. So they just calculated what they needed and how they would like to build the parking. It so happened that it was 3 spaces short. They are certainly building what they think they would need. Now, if they turned out they needed 3 more spaces, they have plenty of room to do that later. But we're comfortable with the parking that they're proposing.
And at what point will the roads supporting this addition be connected to the existing streets of the main campus?
That's really hard to say. We have no knowledge of when the campus would further develop around this new building. It could be soon, it could be years from now. We simply don't know the timing on that.
But since it is the one building, there's not seen to be a need for a light onto Rab Road exiting that space.
That's actually under study right now by an engineering firm that's working on behalf of Heartland Community College, which is why we have the condition in this report.
Okay. I believe that's all I had. Thank you.
Mr. Nord?
Thank you. There's a lot to this. If it turns out that later we find some information was presented that was materially false, what's the ramification of this vote?
That's a suppositional question. You don't have to answer that, Mr. Day. We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah,
Seriously.
I can't imagine what that would be.
Hypothetically, something was missed.
Such as?
Something you would determine materially important.
Mayor, I guess. I would just say-
I'm ending this discussion right now. You are out of order, Mr. Nord.
I'd just like the record to
You're
reflect
asking
that my question
suppositional
wasn't answered.
questions. You're not asking questions that require any basis in fact. Further on the item? Please call the roll.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Ms. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Nord?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Cummings? Is abstaining? Mayor Kus?
Aye. The resolution is approved. Item 9 is a resolution conditionally approving a site plan for Heartland Community College, the same project.
Move approval?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion on this item. Please call the roll.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Ms. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Nord?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Cummings is recusing. Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The resolution is approved. Item 10 is a resolution conditionally approving an amended preliminary subdivision plan for a portion of Greystone Field subdivision on Parkside Road.
So
approval?
moved.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion on this item.
Who are you giving it to?
I'll let the clerk make that pick. Please call the roll.
Ms. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Nord?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Cummings?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The resolution is approved. Item 11 has been removed. That will come back to you at a later time. It's not ready for action tonight. So we move to new business, which is 2 presentations. The first is a presentation on smart city initiatives.
Thank you, Mayor. I am going to slide over. We're playing musical chairs this evening for a little bit. Ms. Gadaraju and her team are going to share some information about where we are on what she says is our smart city journey. So we've got some great information to share and some great demonstrations. So I look forward to hearing from you after their presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you so much for having us here this evening to provide an update on our Smart Cities journey. So you probably have heard us talk about the Smart Cities as a journey and not a destination. But we also want to reiterate that Smart Cities mean different things to different communities. Here in Normal, we embrace the definition of using data and technology to efficiently serve our citizens and improve our operations. To help us with this journey, we've embraced this maturity model that's widely accepted in the smart city space. So this 5-stage maturity model goes from ad hoc all the way to optimized, really showcasing how data and technology is more integrally deployed throughout the systems as we progress on this journey. When we came to you with this presentation in October of 2020, our baseline assessment was anywhere between ad hoc and opportunistic. Today, I'm super happy to report that we have made progress, And in your council packet is a detailed report with examples that outline our assessment and areas that we've made progress on. We'll be taking the next 10 to 15 minutes just highlighting a few examples that helped us on this journey. But the last 10 minutes of this overall presentation will be focusing on demonstrating our open data portal, which we are super excited to launch. Okay. At this stage of our maturity, sorry about that. So at this stage of our maturity, the key building blocks for us are these four outlined here on this presentation. Number one, plans and policies that are people-centric. And two, a network that is flexible, scalable, and secure, not just for today's needs, but also helps us advance on this journey. The third one is data and analytics that helps us be more evidence-based and improve our transparency efforts. And last but not the least, our digitization efforts of several manual processes that reduce mundane tasks. We've made tremendous gains in the areas of data and analytics and digitization efforts, and we are working in other areas. So the critical aspects for us in assembling these building blocks are three things: our people, processes, and products. So let's talk about our people first. So town staff from across all departments and all levels are being impacted by technology advancements. So upskilling our workforce is absolutely essential. As we upskill and our people evolve in using technology, they feel enabled and motivated to innovate. Along with individual trainings and development efforts, we also have several interdepartmental teams that are working on technology-focused projects. We'll be highlighting just a couple later on in the presentation. The second one here is processes. I think it is important to say, as we come across issues, instead of really trying to address that one issue, we are trying to zoom out and look at a broader process and definitely establish steps that are repeatable and eventually scalable. And these are aspects that are critical for us to build the essential framework for our smart city journey. This approach really does help us improve efficiencies. Again, you will see some examples later on in this presentation. Last but not the least, products. So as the town is working towards maximizing our use of technology, we want to make sure that the technology that we do have is being used to the fullest. For example, during COVID, our digitization efforts were pretty much on steroids. And a big portion of that was enabled by our Office 365 deployment completely. GIS, as many of you remember, started out as a map-making software. Today, what you'll see is it is one of our critical smart city platforms moving forward. So these are just a couple of examples of how we are using enterprise products for ways that are not entirely designed. So we are really pushing the limits on those. What we also want to highlight here is we are examining all applications that serve very unique or niche purpose for a single department. So we are moving more towards applications that serve the entire enterprise and eliminate or reduce, I shouldn't say eliminate, it'll be a while before we do that, but definitely reduce the number of niche applications. So before I advance to the next set of slides, I think it's important for us to note the alignment of the smart city vision with our leadership team. So I want to thank our leadership team in this process. So as technology is, as we work on rapidly deploying these, it's improving their processes, but also means evolving. So I do want to thank our leadership team, and I want to thank Ms. Reese particularly for her unwavering support throughout the process. We have about 7 smart city domains under which our projects are typically outlined. I may not be able to go through all those examples, but they're outlined in the report that was submitted. Today, we'll be highlighting these 4 domains here: operations, urban systems, digitally normal, and inclusion and diversity efforts. But towards the end, we will be talking quite a bit about our data and analytics efforts. So under smart operations, the 2 big buckets of projects here, the first one is improving departmental operations. This one focuses on increasing efficiencies for internal staff and improving service for our customers. So to demonstrate with an example, I want to highlight the recent water shutoffs that were resumed post-COVID. I shouldn't say post-COVID, after a brief suspension after COVID. Staff knew that a lot of customers would be impacted by this, so several departments, water, finance, communications, and INT came together, examined the whole process, and really identified areas of inefficiency to streamline the process. Without doing that, it would have impacted our customers, but more importantly, it would have been a chaos within operations. Just to simple examples, we've included as much information in the letter that was sent out to the customer so they can respond in a timely manner. We've eliminated the manual processes that were in place for many years and digitized those to make it easy for them to respond. In grand scheme of things, in the works that we are doing, these are not huge projects, but these are the types of projects that really exemplify the work that's going on a day-to-day basis. So this is what we mean by smart operations. The second set of projects under smart operations is more on the back end. So this is stuff that nobody sees. This is stuff that needs to be done. So having a secure and scalable network is absolutely critical. So we have been doing a lot of hardware and software asset management, planning and improvements, definitely spending quite a bit of time on improving our security posture, partnering with agencies much bigger than us, like our Center for Internet Security, which is a nonprofit arm of Department of Homeland Security. So these are the back-end projects that typically probably won't see the light of the day, but critical for us to improve our operations. So under smart urban systems, again, I'm going to group these under 2 buckets. The first types of projects, which makes up the bulk of our projects under urban systems, is really improving the operations of our urban systems using better data gathering and quality of the data. The examples in this typically are like a PACER assessment that our engineering department is currently undertaking, extensive use of video data to really assess the quality of our streets. A recent example that was in front of the council is community investment plan. We won't go into the details of that one. I think we've covered that pretty extensively. This category is going to be very important for us as we move forward or as we mature on this journey. Having good quality data not only helps us improve our operations today, but help us plan our urban systems better. The second group of projects in this category is essentially making sure that all our urban systems are connected. So of course that includes our town facilities, but also our assets such as our traffic signals. So this connectivity helps us improve our operations today, but is essential to future-proof all our urban assets. Then we group a bunch of projects we call digitally normal. These are digital services that town offers today, and we fully expect these services to grow quite a bit over the next several years. Our communications team, in partnership with several departments, several towns department, has made tremendous strides in improving our website. Of course, they redesigned the site, but most importantly, this little guy, Hugh, was deployed. The purpose of Hugh was to make sure the information is accessed easily on our website. But on the back end, our communications team uses that data to identify content gaps and better serve our residents. Another set of projects in here is improving communications with our residents and businesses. In the last few months, there were a couple of instances where we recognized that we have several different communication systems each department uses to interact with their particular stakeholders. But when it comes to town-wide interactions with our residents and businesses, we needed a much more unified platform that allows all departments to interact using omni-channel communications. So as the town matures as a smart city, it is absolutely important for us to make sure that our digital services are not limited to just a select few, but make sure that everybody within the town can take advantage of that. For that, we need to address digital divide issues. Again, digital divide issues are very different for each community. In our community, one of the projects that we undertook last year was distribution of refurbished computers at a low cost. That was a partnership with PCs for People. We didn't know what to expect, but we had 200 families who came in to take advantage of that. Definitely established a need for a similar project. Connectivity, internet connectivity is changing. The need for internet connectivity is changing practically daily. So we are working with several regional partners to continue to identify what the latest standard is and work with regional partners to see the types of projects that would be needed in our community so we can put some programs together to address those needs. All right, those are some high-level examples on those domains. So the next set of slides, we are going to talk very much about how data is assisting us with our decision-making and operations. So this slide here highlights our data-driven decision-making process. The few dashboards here, the very first one is INT help desk metrics. One of the goals that we have internally is we would like to address 90% of our help desk tickets within 24 hours. Very aggressive goal. We want to achieve that goal by 2025. So we do have this data that we track. It connects to our case, which is our help desk system live. It helps us track where we are today. But what it also does is it helps us understand the types of issues that we are having. So instead of being reactive, we then structure our future projects to proactively address those. On the top right-hand corner, you see recreation programming. So this is a dashboard that's pulling data straight from Parks and Recreations program. I think they call it Rec Track. So this provides Parks Department leadership team with the data and information they need to manage their programs efficiently, report for their annual reports and accreditation programs, and really make decisions based on marketing decisions and others based on this data. The bottom one that I want to highlight here is the CDM financial report. This is an example of a dashboard that eliminated a mundane task for our staff. So finance team used to export this report from our existing financial system for CDM on a monthly basis. So this dashboard really kind of eliminates that task. It connects to the back end of our financial system, makes this data available for our CDM folks pretty much live. So this set of projects here is, these highlight how data is helping us streamline our operations. So in mid-2021, when we know we wanted to launch our open data portal, there are several applications out there that communities use to launch their portals. We wanted to see if our existing applications such as Office 365 and GIS products can help us launch that. To test those technologies, we launched an internal open data portal first. Which of course, we succeeded with that. But in that process, we also worked with our existing departments, identified some areas of inefficiencies, and used that pilot as an example to say, can we address these issues? Because ultimately, when we're talking about open data, we don't want to create more work for our departments. We want to make their operations a little bit better than what they are today. So the example that you're seeing here, council action reports, clerk's department used to maintain these. several different databases. Documents were maintained on servers. So if department heads needed this or staff needed this, it was always a phone call to the clerk's department for that information. So this process really streamlined all of that and put council action reports on internal open data portal. So the second example that you're seeing here, or probably not seeing very well, is our facilities procurement dashboard. So this is a great example of how a process that was entirely manual was translated into entirely digital. It streamlined the procurement process for our facilities team, but it also really provided the type of data that's crucial for their accreditation and annual reporting processes, like green product percentages at various facilities. With that, I would like to highlight our people aspect of this, and I want to give a huge shout out to our Data I team. Data I team is a cross-departmental collaboration that Ms. Reese assembled in mid-2021 to help INT staff work with all town departments to improve our overall data culture. So this team really helped us identify data sets that are prime for publication, worked with us. Several of them are data owners themselves, and we explained the difference between data owners in the report, particularly in the Open Data Directive that was attached to the report. But this is the team that worked closely with us to help us get the data products that we are getting ready to launch here. So I'd like to give a very special shout out to our Data I team. So with that, I am very excited to talk about launching our Open Data Portal, hopefully within the next day or two. An Open Data Portal is an online platform that supports a collection of publicly available data in machine-readable format. Open data portals are a fantastic way for governments to improve transparency and accountability, both of which are essential principles for our smart city journey. Again, we'd like to schedule this launch within the next day or two. And I'm going to pass it on to Mr. Spencer Lurch, our data specialist, to do a demonstration of our Open Data Portal. But before I pass this on to him, I want to publicly thank him for all his efforts. He's been with us a little over a year, but in the short time that he's been with us, he's able to connect several applications on the back end and really break down data silos that helped us really kickstart this data journey. So without further ado, I am going to pass it on to Mr. Lurch.
Thank you. I don't want to have to live up to that introduction. All right. So as was mentioned earlier, the Open Data Portal is essentially a platform where we can host and share town data. I will just take you through a quick tour of how it works and how we can access this information and what information you can expect to find on here. So this is the landing site that you'll see when you visit the Open Data Portal. But the first data set that you'll see is our featured data set. Right now it's the Community Investment Plan, but this will change based off of what is new or what we think might be particularly relevant to members of our community. I know this was demonstrated a few weeks ago, so I won't go through this one specifically, but this will be a dynamic data set that will change based off of what's important. The data and categories is the next section. You'll see that the data sets that we are launching with the initial launch of the Open Data Portal fits into 3 categories. We have budget and finances, licenses and permitting, and public safety. So I'll just take you through a quick tour of each one of these and what you can expect to find there. For public safety, the information that's being generated here comes directly from our police daily log. You can see the information in 2 different ways. One is this blotter, which you'd actually see a version of this on the normal.org website. We're legally obligated to produce this information, but because it's information that we're sharing, we figured this would be an excellent place for this to live. But what we're also able to do with existing technology that we have through the town is translate this to our mapping software with the Daily Log dashboard. So as you can see as this loads up, the daily log information is the same information here on the right, but it's also viewable in a mapping application, along with different tiles with high-end data metrics, and also you can see those metrics, how they occur over time. You'll notice that all of the dashboards, along with having these tiles that have high-end data, will also have different filters that you can access on the left. We default to 7 days just to align with the blotter application that we have. But there's other date ranges, 30 days, 365 days, or you can just do a custom range. I'm just pointing this on this dashboard, but with any of the dashboards that have any kind of time data, you can filter it that way. With the map itself, you can see that you can explore, move around, and these numbers will change as you move the map and be localized to the visibility of the map's extent. You can click on information for more detailed information on each item. You can also expand. You can expand the map to make it take the whole screen, so you can get a more clear picture. What also you can do with this data, the data that is in this application is hosted entirely on this website as well. So you can visit the raw data, and this is for every single data set and dashboard that we'll be showing. All that information can be found in tabular format, and it can be downloaded, or for our more tech-savvy people, they can connect to it via an API, which just means that programmers, researchers, and people that are used to processing large amounts of information can connect to that information in an automated way. And documentation for how to do that is also hosted on the website. The next category is permits and licensing. You'll see that once again, all the data has dashboards and then the raw data to support it. You can find that in those links here. For the dashboards we have for permits and licensing, we have a permits issued dashboard and a business licenses. Business licenses is businesses that are licensed through the town. You can look at them by category and product type and see what's going on in which neighborhoods and zoom in, just like with the other one. We also have the permits issued dashboard. This one was a really big win for us to get on the first launch. This is data that we have come to understand is very valued by organizations outside of the town. They use this information for development and decision making in that regard. So when we found out that we were sharing this information with like 16 different entities and producing that information for each of those different organizations and people, it made sense for us to produce this information in a digestible way in this dashboard, and also a way where someone could download the information and do their own research. But once again, there's filters and things on the sides that people can use and explore. It's a little bit more user-friendly and digestible for the average user. The last category is budget and finances. I saved this one for last because there is a lot of information here. We have, for our dashboards here, we have the approved budget. This is very high-level budget information. You can go by fiscal year and see it over time. We have our revenue counts and our expenditure counts. Revenues are broken up by revenue sources, and expenditures are grouped by different allocation types, like salary and benefits and things like that. And the last dashboard that I want to bring to council's attention, because this is information that should look somewhat familiar. I don't know about in this format, but it will be information you've probably seen before. Every month, the finance department produces a very detail-rich report for council's consumption. This is information about our funds and finances and budget, and it's about 30 pages long and takes a long time to produce and get all those numbers together. This essentially puts almost all of that information into an interactive dashboard. You can see that it looks at the current fiscal year, and you can look through any accounting period. Right now, we're in January, so this is through December. But the first page is just our overall fund balances, and you can view where those are at year to date. The next item is our general fund line items. These categories are actually the same categories that were in the approved budget dashboard, but you can actually see our budget versus expenditures for the current year. And then the next one is our general fund by department. These are expenditures that are broken out by department. It starts off with the time series data, so month to month what these expenditures look like. That it's also represented down here is the previous year to date versus current year to date. These expenses can be looked at for all or broken down to personnel. And also, if you want to see this as budget versus actual, you can break it out into this view as well and see how we're doing versus the budget. Then similarly, we have our general fund revenues. This has all of our different revenue streams and groups, charges for services, different taxes, and things like that. The metrics that you see highlighted are year-to-date actual, year-to-date budget, and then our previous year-to-date actual, and all of those figures are represented in the graph below and correspond with their colors. And the last one is just our other funds, and these are funds that were highlighted in the previous report. It's taken a while to load, but you can view these items again by budget versus actual, or do month-to-month analysis as well. So that is the monthly financial report and the new format that will be taking, and is now in an automated process and is live and up to date. So back to the main page. The next section after the categories is our applications and maps. These are existing applications and maps on our current town site, but because this is information and data that we're sharing, this is an appropriate place for this to land. But you can see our zoning, public services, and things like that. You'll also see applications that are hosted by McLean County. These live here because we produce the information that supports these, but because what's going on in the region, especially as far as like construction and trails, is important to members of our community, whether it's in Normal or Bloomington. We've partnered with the county to share that information countywide. You can go to those individual regional partners by clicking any of those links. The last category is story maps. While the dashboards give the user an opportunity to kind of dive in and out and drill into specific information, the story maps provide more of a narrative format to go location to location and see information and imagery and graphics that go with each of those locations. And the bottom of the page, I want to highlight two important things that are very important, especially for me. We have two different ways that you can contact us and give us feedback. One is an open-ended survey where people can fill out information and they can stay anonymous if they like, or they can just contact me directly via email. And I would be more than happy to answer any questions or refer you to whoever might know the information about specific data sets. There's an entire data catalog that people can view. Legal things like terms of use, the Open Data Directive, and then the API documentation that I referred to earlier. And then last but not least, if you know what you're looking for, you can just go to the search bar and look for permits, and you'll find permits, and it'll take you right to where you want to go. But yeah, I would just want to thank you for the opportunity to present this. This was a lot of work and a lot of coordination with a lot of different departments, so it was a lot of fun to work on.
Awesome. So that's all we have. I know that was a lot of information, so we are open for questions.
Are there questions? Ms. Cummings?
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to say this was a lot of information, and so good to see us starting to work in this space. I know you talked about a little bit, and you started down the pathway of open data, and you talked a little bit about APIs. Do we foresee ourselves connecting to other open APIs? I know some other cities are already beginning. I know there's questions about security in that. And so I know, are you planning towards that? Is that something that we should see in the future? Because I think also for us as a council, it should be a point of reference, because I know being myself once upon a time in the data space, data's money. So, but even having those open APIs in the long run, there's also a save to us too when we can connect to some of those other larger open APIs. So is there anything that you foresee in the future as it relates to those things?
Yes, actually, as an example, I think we've connected to those regional data sets in that form, but we internally we connect to a lot of national and regional data sets that are published in a similar fashion, yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Nord and then Ms. Smith.
Excuse me, thank you. What type of public involvement have you had with like the public interface to this?
So this will be the launch, Mr. Nord, and our hope is once we show people what we can do, we really do want to start taking feedback to say how can we improve this.
Okay, but nobody from the public was involved in looking at the public interface thus far?
No.
Okay. For some of these, I just want to make sure that we're getting more transparency, not less. The CIP that you showed, the old CIP, there was a list of projects that we knew needed to be done, but didn't have funding for. That's lost. Is there a way to incorporate that back in?
We addressed that when we had the CIP discussion. At this point, staff can certainly talk about it. I guess for council's benefit, it's probably a challenge to put into a report what we thought of and didn't do. So can you report what you didn't do? Well, maybe. I don't know. We'll have to think about it. But in the meantime, I guess back to the original point of did any citizens have input or any public input on rolling out the open data? No, because generally most folks don't know the kind of data that this organization has. So we worked internally first to build our own internal, we call it open data, but it's just internal from between department and department exchange, and built that system, and then built our I-team so we knew what each department was doing and the data that they could work on pulling together that we believe would be useful. I guess a couple of thoughts in terms of, is this relevant to the community at all? Well, we know it's going to be relevant to you because some of the reports you get every month are on the site. So now everyone can get them, not just you. So that certainly increases transparency in terms of financial reports, for example. The other thing is we get a lot of Freedom of Information Act requests which give us some indication of things that people want to know. So we have a pretty good idea of the data we think that is useful to start with, and we'll go from there. And I think we did point out the number of reports we were generating for monthly permits in the inspections department. Now we don't have to generate those reports. People can look on the website. So it increases efficiencies. We have a pretty good indication of how to start, and this is how we're starting. And I do want to take a quick moment, not to steal your time, Mr. Nord, but I do want to take a quick moment to thank Ms. Gadaraju and Spencer and the whole INT team, as well as all the departments, because a lot of months of work went into pulling this together and to be thoughtful about it. And the most important thing is, I think, is the fact that we're taking a thoughtful approach. We're not throwing in the whole kitchen sink. We're throwing some places to start and building it off of a policy that we want people to know our practice, our procedure, and how we intend to proceed. So.
Okay. To your point of all the questions or all the projects that we thought we were going to do that we didn't do in the old CIP, there's a list of about 200, maybe more, that are ones that we thought or that you've identified needed to be done.
The question
that were
was
not.
asked and answered, and this was discussed at the last meeting. Can you go to your next question, please?
Well, I'm just saying that that list is out there and now it's disappearing. Another point is, or another question, is this leading edge, or is this based on proven solutions that a lot of other municipalities out there are doing?
Oh, this is definitely, at this point, it is definitely proven. I wouldn't say this is leading edge. I think this is a great way for communities to start improving transparency and accountability.
Okay, and then for the FOIA requests, it might be nice to put FOIAs up there. That way you don't get repeat FOIAs. But thank you.
Ms. Smith, and then Mr. McCarthy.
First off, thank you for making this lay-friendly. But in that vein, could you clarify what API stands for?
Oh my gosh, I'm a tech person. I don't even know.
I think it's Advanced Public Interface, or.
I don't know.
Application
It's application-
programmable.
Yes, thank you.
programmable
Application
interface.
programming interface,
Sorry.
yes.
Okay.
You guys would see if I
Thank
Googled it.
you. But no, it is a very standard, there are a couple of connections, we use acronyms so often. It's a very common way for developers to use to connect to the data.
Okay. I notice you've got the building permits.
Yes.
And that's something that I turn to the pantograph on Sundays to read what building permits and the dollar amount and where they are and who's getting them. How do you address problems where there might be a cutoff discrepancy? Because the pantograph is going to go to print at a certain time. The data on the website is going to be, I presume, pretty much up to the moment. So are there cutoff disparities that might cause someone to see a difference in data on this website and what might be published by someone else?
So, and Spencer, you may be able to answer this. So our data, depending on the data set, and I believe permits will probably be up to date as of last complete month. So that is, we have metadata on our website that talks about when the last published date is and how frequently we publish this information. So that will be a good source for people to know how current the data is.
So how prominent is that date information when someone is actually looking at
The data set.
subset?
So it is, it's published on the data set under details. So you can see this was published on January 14th.
Okay. And then cybersecurity is a big issue. I've heard of some ransomware attacks. What security measures, or how comfortable are you that the security measures in place, while we want this to be available for people to view, we also don't want it to be hacked for someone to modify it or change it?
So one of the key things that we do with open data is we scrub any private information. So we do not publish, if you can go back to the police data, for example, we try not to publish any, we actually make sure that we don't publish any private information on this site. So most of this information here, people can download, people can connect, they can actually interact with this data.
So, for example, the address on West Rab, the reason you have only one digit displaying is that if the others are provided, it might be too descriptive to allow someone to actually determine which residence that was.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. McCarthy?
Thanks, Mayor. First, thank you for the presentation. I won't acronym this a lot. You guys did a fair amount of that, and but I agree you did a great job keeping this at our level. We appreciate that greatly. First, just a bravo to everybody involved in this project. My colleagues all know, and if you've paid attention, you've heard me very interested in this subject for quite a long time, for over a decade now, involved in various projects around the community. But
Mr. McCarthy, can you get on your microphone a little bit?
Just a big congratulations for the progress so
Thank
far. You know, 2 years ago, this conversation to today, what a wow. An open data portal about to launch and multiple data sets out there at the outset is pretty outstanding. And for the media and the friends at home, I mean, what just got showed to us is stuff that you had to ask somebody for. You had to make a phone call or an email, and now you can click on some buttons and find it out yourself. It's so much more efficient, so much more transparent. There isn't even a comparison. So if you know, the old voltmeter that used to be on the dashboards in our 1974 disappeared, the tech that's available in our 2022 dashboard is so supercharged and amazingly interactive and informative. It's hard to even describe the difference. So kudos for your progress. I think it's really important to emphasize your journey terminology. This is a point in a process along the way. This will evolve and grow, and the enthusiasm of this young man to continue to build out the open data portal is excellent, and I'm sure we'll be seeing more data sets along the way. A couple of things that stood out from your presentation and the information that you provided to us in the packet that I just wanted to highlight is, a focus on reducing silos and inefficient manual processes and outmoded and outdated single-use technologies that were existing in our town, and your ability to back up, look at broadly across the organization, and if this is a problem here, it's got to be a problem there, and how do we create an organization-wide, more broad solution with single-service technologies and better processes across the organization will save us money, will save us time, and increase the transparency and accessibility and the service level for our citizens immensely. The other thing, just a couple of quick mentions, is the connectivity and interoperability across the organization to improve services. The CIP is one example, just the beginning of an example of how we can actually use mapping software so people can look at what's going to happen in their neighborhood, what the budget is, and who to call in the town of Normal. We couldn't do that without that connectivity and the interoperability between systems and departments that you guys are starting to piece together. It's so exciting, the change and that level of functioning. And lastly, on the open data side, it's important to kind of level set that open data begins internal. It's not an external process. We don't go to the community and say, hey, what do you want to know about what we warehouse in data? Because people don't know what we warehouse about data. So it's an internal process of review of what we have, what's publishable, what needs to be scrubbed, what needs to be secured, and crossed against FOIA requests, all the phone calls and emails we get. So you guys have navigated some of those things that are the most highest priority to start with and starting to use that. And then the public is going to let us know.
Yes.
They're going to continue to go, oh, if you can get that, can we get the next thing? And, this type of open data set approach really starts to get at entrepreneurial efforts. From an economic development perspective, local organizations that see that, companies that want to know this kind of information to come and locate here, or new people that are looking to market to our residents, new business opportunities. This kind of thing is not new in the slightest. It's been around for a decade or more. Microsoft was here 5 or 6 years ago trying to encourage us to do this, but I'm glad to see the the progress to this point. At some point, I'll ask questions about how this looks in terms of our sustainability of our built environment. That will come later. I know you'll update us more on that, but I'll have questions on that. But thanks for the presentation.
Absolutely, thank you.
I'd like to just make a few comments on this too. First off, this is just incredible. It's incredible what's going to be available to people, to staff of the town of Normal. I'm just blown away, and I think one of the things that we need to do as a council and as a government is talk about this as much as we possibly can to get people used to the idea that this exists, and the information that you want is at your fingertips if you want it. So I don't think we can tell that story enough while this thing develops. And the other thing I think is worth mentioning, and I've not worked with anything as sophisticated as this, but in my own business, having that data reference each other the way it does sometimes alerts you to problems you didn't even know you had. And I think that's one of the key issues of having data amassed like this. It really gives you a holistic picture and cross-platform or cross-agency or cross-department interactions,
Absolutely.
I think is one of the key pieces that's going to come out of this. So this is so impressive. Thank you. Mr. Nord?
One last question. The town has got an enormous amount of data on a business, on people. And some of that data may not be appropriate to share because if you know A and B, you can figure out C, that type of thing.
Yep.
Who is it that's looking at the data that's being released to make sure that we're not putting something out there that could violate that could cause a problem for someone and now their identity's taken or, something bad happens?
Yep. So we do have our Open Data I team that's looking at this much more broadly, but we're also simultaneously working on governance practices, privacy policies. So there is more to come down the pike on this one. This really, I cannot stress the point here about journey. This is really the first milestone in this journey. But going forward, we do have a cross-departmental team that's looking at this.
Okay, because one thing I noticed was you put up a picture about businesses, and you've got all the business locations, which I know that's not brick and mortar locations because there were locations in or in residential areas. Possibly those folks, when they filled out the business app or the business license for the town, they didn't realize it was going to be published, their home address. So you might, have someone from the public look at that and say, hey, is this okay to put out before it goes out?
I think, can we jump in and explain how that is reviewed, Vasu, in terms of the information that's currently already available and how we just changed the format to make it available for more people to see it? But certainly, that's our job. That's the clerk's job when
Yep.
we submit, when we fill FOIA requests, the clerk staff reviews everything to make sure it's privacy protected. So that's what we do. But in this particular format, I think if you could explain a little bit how we protect the information. One example you gave.
Excuse me, I don't mean to get into this because this is something between you and whoever the company
you
is
asked,
that's
so
actually
I'm
looking at it.
responding
I'm
to you.
just saying, please talk to them because that's something I pointed out. And in security, there's something called security through obscurity. We're taking the obscurity piece away. So, your professionals need to look at that because they're going to look at the big picture. We've only seen the stuff on screen here. So I'm just pointing it out. I'm not trying to,
I know, Mr. Nord, and since
micromanage.
you've asked, I think it's important for us to answer because I don't want anyone to think those are things we don't think of.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
if you could just explain a little bit about how things are reviewed and protected before, minimally, high level.
Yep. So we go through a series of steps before determining a particular data set can be published. So that includes data quality, readiness, availability. But more importantly, the step before we get to the publication stage is reviewing all the private information that needs to be scrubbed. If there is information about, again, the one that we showed here is when it comes to police data, just the specifics of address, those type of things, we scrub those before we publish. So another thing that we do is can you pull up the police data dashboard again? When you zoom in too close, we also try to, you can't zoom in beyond a certain level when you get to these dashboards. That again provides another level of security for people to not start guessing where these things are.
You'll see at that point.
Yep,
when
at that
when
point
you
it
zoom in
doesn't,
Too
yep.
close, you don't see the dots anymore.
Yep.
So I just wanted to point out that that is certainly
Something-
imperative to data. Anything you put out in the open for the world to see, you have to be careful on what you're putting out. And we are certainly doing that as best I can tell.
Yep.
So I'll ask a follow-up question on that, just for clarity, but there really isn't anything on this open data dashboard that people couldn't get through a FOIA. Is that correct?
Correct. Correct.
Thank you.
Ms. Smith?
Ms. Smith?
And segueing on the mayor's comment, as far as business locations, if you as a business are required to report an address, that is publicly accessible information. So the format may have changed from requesting it through a FOIA or making a phone call to someone. But if a business owner lists their residence as the business location, that is publicly accessible information if they in fact are a licensed business. Is that correct? Thank you.
Further questions? Thank you again. It was an incredible step forward for the town and the community, so thank you.
Mayor and council, I just again want to thank Spencer and Vasu and the team, but also just to let council know that this is going to be live for the world tomorrow. So you can start playing around with it and accessing it from the town's website.
Great. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Item 13 is a presentation of the Public Visual Art Plan.
We're changing chairs again. Mayor, I'm going to invite Ms. Wisman to come, oh, there she is, come forward. I'm going to slide back over to my seat here. I'll take that. Vasu, if you could slide that computer back down this way.
All right.
Thank you. We're sharing technology, sharing seats. Thank you, Mayor and Council. We just would like to take a few minutes of your time this evening to talk about a public art plan. Ms. Wisman has been taking the lead on this, and this is a conversation that staff had with some stakeholders starting in 2019, pre-pandemic, when we thought this was going to be something that we would focus on. 2020 took our attention, diverted our attention to other things, but the internal conversations continued, and Ms. Wisman, holding the title, a big title of Cultural Arts Director and Children's Discovery Museum Executive Director. She's certainly the expert in this area, so I'm going to be handling the PowerPoint while she talks a little bit about the plan.
Great. Well, we are really excited to talk about this.
Are you checked out on that, IT?
I know.
It's hard to follow up a presentation like that. This is more a big picture discussion, rather data specific, but of course there will be data that we'll be able to use in the future to help us make some of these decisions, and that's actually something that Vasu's team has been working with us on within the Cultural Arts Department. We're making decisions about Children's Discovery Museum, the Normal Theater, our festivals, how we're going about doing lots of work. So there are those opportunities. This is specifically, though, more about how we move forward as a cultural arts department when we're looking at visual arts opportunities. The town, as you well know, has been supporting cultural arts for generations. The Cultural Arts Department is new as of 2016, but really many departments have carried this banner, community partnerships, the Harmon Arts Grant, Parks and Recreation, so many past groups, including of course this council, have supported cultural arts in the town. But as 2019 was beginning to wrap up, we actually had some community members who were interested in talking about the visual arts component. And as I started doing research after Ms. Reese had called us together for multiple meetings to collaborate and talk about best practices, and one of the things I found, of course, was our own comprehensive plan, our Vision 2040 plan, and just looking at not only what we, the experts in community planning, were trying to achieve, but what our community was telling us they wanted. And if you read the 2040 Vision plan, there is a lot of discussion about place and belonging and collaboration and bringing people together to create something special, and the fact that people were saying they wanted the town to participate in this, and they wanted the town to look at funding opportunities and where does this fit into the fabric. And it does fit into the fabric of the comprehensive plan. As you can see, we are promoting community identity in public spaces, enhancing our quality of life opportunities for everyone. The thing about public art is public is everybody. So that's people who are in our community, paying taxes, kids who are going to school, people who are visiting, bringing their money in from other communities. The public is everyone. Supports our local economy. You heard Mr. Johnson earlier in public comment. The Sugar Creek Arts Festival alone, just 2 days out of the year, there's about $300,000 generated in the local economy just from arts interested activity. More than that, certainly exists in our community already, but that's a really good a data point that we could share. Looking at physical and mental well-being, there is a lot of research on what visual arts and public arts can be for a community, not only for the obvious, but for some of the things that you can't see. COVID actually has sparked a lot of research and discussion at the federal level about the arts. I mean, you go back to the Great Depression, one of the biggest investments the federal government made was art and public art. Thousands of murals painted all over the country, putting artists to work because they were seen as a viable, respected, necessary sector of our economy. So it is a part of who we are as a nation and as a community. So it definitely fits our comprehensive plan. We did a lot of research looking at other communities to see what some, mid-sized communities like ours were already doing. We have a lot of neighbors that are already doing this. Decatur is already doing this. Champaign and Urbana are working on this. Bloomington has its own plan and their approach most recently. But we also looked at other states. Bloomington, Indiana, if you have traveled there before, they have actually started to really build a whole sector of their economy around their public art and how it actually is not just part of the visual landscape, but also what's bringing in culture, heritage tourism, some of their tech innovations and meetings with the university. Public art is right in the middle of that. And then I've given you in your report, and I hope that you've had some time to read that, other opportunities and other links that you can follow to learn a little bit more about how they're funding those. Each community does it differently, but they all have one thing in common. There is some public investment involved. There's a lot of private dollars involved, there are grants involved, but there's always some component that is public because, as you will find as we talk a little bit later, that's just necessary for most of the grants. I thought I would share just a couple of visuals that might give you some ideas of the depth and possibilities. This is a really good example of history coming together with art, but also seating and public safety. This is in Chicago. It's a parklet that has an independent artist inspiration from workers' cottages that were in the Chicago area. An area that is seen as what built the city and the people whose hands and trades and labor were able to do that. And the shape is actually in reference to those homes. But when the artist was brought in, they collaborated in the space, they talked about what was actually needed here, and they wanted public art, but they also needed seating for buses that were coming, and they needed better lighting and just a better general sense of safety, and public art was able to achieve that. This is nearby in Peoria. This is just one of many public sculptures you can see right now on their sculpture walk. This is another opportunity for some public and private investment. This is just one of, I think, almost 24 sculptures. If you are to go downtown, there is one specific area you can go to, but also as you travel to the museum that you see behind there, the Peoria Riverfront Museum, there are a lot of sculptures, public art, really neat installations. Some of them are changing and some of them are permanent, all along the riverfront. We don't have a river, but we have a lot of spaces, beautiful green spaces our Parks and Rec department does a great job on that could benefit from some visual art. This is also in Peoria. This is a mural. Murals, are transformative, and they are present in our community throughout Central Illinois, and we would love to see more. So there are funds and specifically artists in our community who are able to do that, but also we'll see some more coming up in a few moments, in a minute. But first, sculpture gardens, because one of the things I talk about in this report with you is that there is some low-hanging fruit, if you will. There are some opportunities for, I think, mirroring what many communities are already doing. It puts public art in green spaces, in collaborative shared spaces. It can be rotating art that leases sculpture. It can be commissions to build something new. There are permanent pieces that are part of a permanent collection like we have here with our artwork at Uptown Station. But you can see where it can just be a passive part of your experience, or it can be very active. I'm sure kids love to climb on that bunny. Springfield, Illinois has a very vibrant visual arts program, and it is a great example of public and private. And I'm only really just now being able to, because of COVID, really find the people who have been working in some of these programs. And I feel like I really hit a gold mine talking to a couple of those individuals just this week. So we'll be doing some more sharing. But this is a great experience. This is artification. Every year there are high school students who are brought in, and every year they collaboratively come together and paint a mural. And they do this in their downtown, they do this in neighborhoods. You know, there are community areas that are vying for the next location that would like to see these kind of projects. This is specifically city funded, and then also has some arts partners involved. But it is very popular. The waiting list to get into this program is very long. This is just another sculpture piece that is in Springfield, Illinois, that is quite popular. And again, it's a bit interactive. You can do some things on there. Not all art is, but this one is. And it's just a good example of very different aesthetics that you might see. And then Decatur. Decatur has a great program. Decatur and Urbana both have sculpture gardens in public places that are actually operated by their parks district. Those are independent taxing bodies within their community where the town actually houses the Parks and Rec Department here. They have, over the years, advanced and attracted private dollars and foundations that have come up to support these efforts, but they all started with a public investment. And everybody that I spoke to talked about how great that was. They were able to bring artists together, residents together, and staff together. So how is it funded? Well, that's up to us. That's up to you to decide what the best options could be. But there are obviously some opportunities, and I outlined a couple in the report with you, including the percentage for art, which is a very well established and accepted urban planning method for including public art in spaces. Specifically when major public projects are happening, there is a percentage of that budget that will say there is an art component here. And that's, again, another way of bringing the public in to talk about what's needed in that space. Is it like the parklet where we actually need to have some safety things addressed? Or is it something that is more of just an aesthetic or creating a welcoming space? Maybe there's some social issues that we need to address, or some communities that haven't been represented well or don't feel welcome. These are all invitations, and public art is, if nothing, an invitation that says, this is space for you, this is an opportunity for you. And the Cultural Arts Department in the town certainly believes that. We've been doing it for a long time, just not necessarily through visual arts in a formal capacity. Harmon Arts Grant, well established. We can put more money into that grant to do other things, more things. That's one sector of those opportunities. But we talk about grants. Illinois Arts Council, NEH, National Endowment for Humanities, National Endowment for the Arts. Those are funding opportunities. You heard Mr. Johnson mention the city recently got $1 million for their Creativity Center. Good example of really good money coming back to our local coffers because of art and the value of a creative sector in our economy. And then private philanthropy, some of this conversation in part started because of that. There are donors in our community who would like to be able to donate art to the town, and they don't necessarily know how to do it, or they would like to see a formal program in place so that they can trust that this investment that they have made as artists or as patrons will be cared for and will be part of something that has longevity, sustainability, and a life well beyond maybe themselves. So a community fund for public art is through the Illinois Prairie Community Foundation. That's one example of some collaborations you might have seen recently. That definitely could be an opportunity for us, as well as, again, private family foundations and artists themselves who just want to create something and might have something that's just waiting to have a public space to be in. So Basically, we are proposing a couple of steps that we can take to start to establish this concept. We do need to put together some type of an art steering committee. We have done that before with the town and the McLean County Arts Center. We did that with the curation of the art that you see in this room, right? The art that's throughout Uptown Station. There was a steering committee that helped select that art and purchase that art and decide, what they were doing. And that was citizens, that was art experts, and that was staff coming together. And then we do feel like, we want to engage the public. I mean, it would be a missed opportunity to start and potentially fund a public visual arts program and not ask people to join us and talk about what gets them excited, and are there artists that they're excited? Are they perhaps even artists that we don't know about in our community? Art definitely brings people out in a whole different way. And it has to be genuine, has to be authentic. And that's an important thing in the art community because there's so much difference of opinion and aesthetic and how we've arrived here. The one thing that is kind of like data is money, art is money. Art takes money to create it, to protect it, to invest in it. And when artists know that the patrons or the root of the conversation involves them being valued as a part of the jobs and the creation, and that there is funding involved, even just to put a matching grant together, for instance. It really changes the collaboration, it changes the caliber of the kind of art we're going to see. And I think that we would all agree we want really good art to be in our community and to represent who we are and give people a chance to reflect and come together and hopefully grow and heal. But you want the good stuff, and so that requires some level of investment. So we have humbly included some figures in the report that could represent an opportunity for a sculpture garden if we wanted to start in a green space and pilot a program. That would be somewhere between $100,000 to $250,000. I base those figures on what other communities have been able to do and how long it took them to get their feet off the ground, moving forward on a program like this to establish it for generations to come. And then we want to look at what those opportunities might be. So I mentioned sculpture garden, but the community might tell us differently. We've already talked to the communications department and INT team to figure out ways to get some initial conversations and input from the public. Where have you seen opportunities, or where do you want to see visual public art? And then layer that into the Cultural Arts Department plan. This is a smaller part of what we're working on a much larger scale for the direction that we're going in.
So
Generally, that's where we
I was
are.
going to say, so now you can see why she is taking the lead on our initiative, because she's very passionate, and I think the right person from the town side to lead this and coordinate with stakeholders and just take things to the next level when we start really investing in public art. So.
Thank you. Ms. Cummings, first question.
Yes. First of all, thank you for this great overview that you've presented tonight. And I see that you have some proposed next steps. In your mind, do you have a timeline in which you anticipate even just beginning to build like the steering committee? Do we, I guess in the bigger scheme of things, do we look to begin to engage to invest in public art in 2022? Is that something we want to maybe build out this stuff in the beginning, like the steering committee, to talk a little bit more, and then maybe we see something in 2023? Can you just share a little bit from that perspective, please?
Well, a little bit of it does depend on council and what your timing might be, your comfort level, but it would take about 12 to 18 months to truly get from point A to at least a good starting point, right? I don't even know what letter to give that because it can go so far. But it would only take us a few months, I think, to do some basic surveying and input sessions, and then to start identifying more possible steering committee members, and then start looking at what an actual budget would look like based on what the council was willing to consider for the town budget. We didn't put a date Ms. Reese, on this. So we weren't necessarily saying we were looking at the fiscal year 23. It could be fiscal year 24 if we need time to figure that stuff out financially. But I think the timing on our part is that, again, the Cultural Arts Department is working on, we're still pretty new, and in my first 4 years of being here, I've had almost 2 years of a pandemic affecting our ability to do what we do best. So it was good timing in many ways to be able to spend some of that time researching and making some decisions. So a little bit of it really falls back to you, but if you give me the green light, and we can start working within a few months, and I would say in a good year we would have a plan in front of you that makes sense, that would have a lot of public input.
So then I guess my question now is to probably either City Manager Reese or Mayor Coos, because this item directly that's in the packet tonight is one noted to not be voted on. Therefore, do we foresee ourselves in the near future moving forward or giving direction, or are we waiting to like a strategic planning session to kind of, I guess, pull out whether or not, because I'm sure at this point we're beyond budget timing. So just to get an idea, are we looking more at having a further deeper dive at strategic planning, or we're looking more like next year budget?
Probably yes and yes, actually. I guess I could say if some opportunity dropped in our lap and somebody wanted, let's say an outside entity wanted to fund some public art, and we had a match, we could talk to you and try to get something planned in a final budget document. Right now, there's nothing in the proposed budget that we're going to review next week. But that said, I think next steps to mirror what Ms. Wisman has indicated, I think our next steps and Mayor may have a different opinion, but would be to start gathering the stakeholder group for a steering committee, working closely with the McLean County Arts Center and their expertise, and pull that group together and then start going from there. So we would come back to council with more details on kind of that low-hanging fruit, how to implement some of these ideas. In the meantime, because we will be coordinating some strategic planning processes with you, I'm sure it will be a topic of discussion when council does some shorter term strategic planning, maybe 12 to 18 to 24 month discussions.
Thank you.
Ms. Smith?
A couple of comments and then a question. I do believe that there is support for art in this community. Our gown partner, ISU, had a substantial donation from Wansuk Kim that resulted in the College of Fine Arts being named after her to recognize that generosity. And here on the town side, Laura Burke made a substantial personal donation to establish the Illinois Art Station. So as the gentleman pointed out in his public comments, art has a place, and I want to speak to the value of art to our disabled community, because it enriches their lives and in some ways connects with them when other avenues of communication do not. And this is on my mind. It's not a visual art per se, but Penguin Project organizational meeting is tonight. And what that program has done for individuals who are usually in the shadows, to give them front and center stage is incredible. And Seedling Theater built off from that because there's an age limit to Penguin Project. And when some individuals who never had that chance encountered, what about us? Because as they were going through school and programs, there was really no art program for them, and Seedling Theater came along and said, we have theater for you. But I want to say that in looking at the emails I received, I've not received anyone saying we should not spend on art, that there is a recognition that our lives are richer for having this in our lives. And I think when everyone was in lockdown, they were looking for avenues to bring them joy, and nothing does that like art. Which brings me to my question. We've had a presentation on the American Rescue Plan dollars that have been awarded to Normal, and we had not come up with ideas for all of them. Is there discretion in the funding of that program to allow the town to pursue art programs with some of those federally sponsored dollars?
I believe there is some discretion. If my recollection is correct, I think we have about $1.5 million of our $10.8 million allocation that we haven't yet talked about potentially allocating. We can certainly explore that. I do want to indicate that there are probably other growing needs as well pertaining to housing and such that we will be considering, and when we come back to council with a plan or recommendations for that final $1.5 million allocation, we'll talk in further detail about it. So I think that it's possible, and we'll explore that further.
Okay, thank you.
Further on this item? Mr. Nord?
Thank you. There's a list on packet page 13-6 of existing town public art assets and activities. How much are we currently spending on cultural arts for these activities?
Well, it's a pretty broad question as far as our entire department arguably would be budgeted to do that. The Children's Discovery Museum, the Normal Theater, there are parts of what we're doing with, Parks and Recreation. So we'd have to put some numbers together to be more specific.
So for like the Sugar Creek Arts Festival, does that come out of the cultural arts budget completely?
Some of it does. Some of it comes from Public Works for blocking the streets. A good deal of it comes from the McLean County Arts Center. That's their event that we help collaborate with them on. They pay for a lot of stuff.
Sure. So I would like to see how much we're currently spending. And then, I guess I'd like...
Specifically on public art, or I guess define that for me.
Well, so you've defined it on page 13-6, all these existing town public art assets and activities. And you've got parks and recreational programs, Children's Discovery Museum programs, Constitution Trail, the list is extensive.
And it's in the budget. All of that is already budgeted for. It's in the existing budget and will be planned for the
Okay,
coming
because I've asked before for like how much we've spent on, say, Sweet Corn Circus, and I can't get those numbers. So I'd like aggregate number, how much are we spending, and then the next question is, what is the additional ask? Because that would be the follow-up question. How much more are you looking for?
To implement this plan? Just so but you only want to know how much we spend. You don't want to know any revenue.
I want to know how much we spend, net, how much we spend. As far as I know, I don't know that the town charges for anything, but yeah, net.
Well, but in this list is Parks and Recreation programs, so that's all of our rec programs.
Sure, so net, because like the theater, the theater doesn't make money, so yes, give it to me as a net. They do bring in some income, so net, but I'm sure it's a loss, so that I expect.
Sure. No,
so,
that's probably true. Most would be subsidized because we see this as a quality of life and community amenity.
So then, how much are we spending now net? What's the additional ask? And then, so we've got several colleges and universities here in the community. Are they not doing enough arts programs?
Well, they focus on their campus community, and they, just like any other grant funding agency, would be looking for partnership and collaboration. They don't want to carry the load on their own when perhaps the space we're talking about is not in their space. That's a green space that belongs to the town versus on the ISU campus. If we're working with Illinois Art Station, that's pretty typical for a collaboration, is to expect that all parties involved will have some skin in the game.
Okay.
And if it's under our property, if it sits on our property and we're caring for it, we're probably going to carry a heavier load.
Okay, because several of the locations that are mentioned on this same page, 13-6, or, this underpass area. We've got the Uptown connectors listed, Mark Peterson Plaza, Uptown 2.0 area, the Uptown Normal Windows. This is all right here in Uptown. So I would like to know where this is going. Is this being spread out through the community?
Yeah.
And where
the
exactly, or is
plan-
it all right here?
Cultural arts wants to represent cultural arts throughout the town. There are obviously some easier spaces for us to bring people together as the central point of the community, which is the seat of our government and our gathering space. Every community typically has a massive gathering space, and for us it is Uptown Normal, so there is a lot of opportunity. The things you're specifically listing are listed because there's new construction happening, and because one of the ideas we had was that Percentage for Art is an opportunity to consider some funding for that in the space, but also from the very beginning, at least when I came on board, I was asked to consider what might happen from the philanthropic side of the Children's Discovery Museum Foundation if we were to try to find an artistic, playful, educational art piece that might be in the plaza space, and that could very well be entirely privately funded. So there are some blank canvases, if you will, that are about to be created. And when you do that, if you do it with intention and you consider that these spaces that are going to transform the transportation, the connectivity, the economic sector that is, our uptown, which all the ramifications that come with that throughout the community, you can do that with art as part of the conversation and make a big difference. I mean, it's illustrated in communities across the country that if we think about it as part of the solution and as part of the plan, then it no longer is the secondary thought of, oh, well, let's put art over here, how do we make that work? Well, no, the base for it is already created. We already have this concrete that we're getting ready to install at the lowest point of this plaza, as the connector is being created. Does that present an opportunity for a piece? Does the connector itself become a piece? And just like we looked at the cottage piece in Chicago, the parklet, there can be lighting elements, there could be some pretty amazing things that could happen in that space that would solve public safety and transportation connection issues with art.
Okay, so I understand. So then it sounds like this is going to increase the cost because we've got the underpass coming. So whatever we thought the underpass was going to cost now it's more. But I keep going back to we have priorities. There's so much money we have coming in. This CIP, I'm looking at the one from last year. We've got projects, substandard water main projects that don't have funding. Here's $1 million for the water department lime sludge lagoon expansion. We've got to decide where are our priorities. I'm not downplaying art at all. It's just there's only so much money. Do we want people to have clean water first before we start spending on amenities? Or not. It just comes down to priorities. It's like we're sitting around in our house, we see the roof is starting to leak, collapse in places. And now we're talking about, instead of addressing those, we want to build a sculpture park. For me, I've got to wrap my head around priorities. And it's nothing to do, and I'm not saying art is not important. It's just, we do a lot with art already. And we've got all these other projects that I think are important as well.
Mr. Nord, I appreciate that perspective. Your position hasn't changed at all, and we understand your position on this, wants versus needs and the like, so we aren't surprised to hear that. I do want to point out, though, in terms of focusing on, back to your original statement of page 13.6, where we talk about art opportunities, of the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 things listed, it's maybe 50-50. So your question was, are we only focusing on Uptown? And I just want to indicate, of all those bullet points, it's probably 50-50. Half might be Uptown area and half not. If you move on into the report, it says sculpture park, identifies areas not in Uptown, couple other locations identified, page 13.7, not Uptown. So back to your statement of, this seems to be Uptown focused, and when I'm looking at it, it's not focused at all on Uptown. It's very much community-wide. So I just want to point that out in case you missed those other bullet points.
Sure, and also, people are leaving the state of Illinois because of taxes. This is one more tax you're asking to put on our residents.
Well, I don't know that we've
And-
asked for anything, Mr. Nord. We've indicated we will come back to you with a detailed plan. So I don't want to jump and say we're increasing taxes. I think that would be very erroneous statement right now.
Well, it
So
says in here,
let's be really cautious about that.
Funding
I guess I'll defer to the
possibilities.
mayor on those kind of statements.
is 0.5% to 1.5% of all public construction and development projects. This is one of the things that's proposed. So that is raising a tax. It doesn't exist. New would be raising a tax. I'm against raising a tax for this until
We
we can
understand your
address
position.
all of our other problems first. Infrastructure's first, and then we can go back to the amenities. We spent an enormous amount on Constitution Trail, so that's an amenity as well. We have to prioritize.
So, Mr. Nord, I'm going to respond to some of the things you said there. And I think your financial concerns are certainly worth asking, but I question you on your timing of doing that, because there's actually no plan. There's no budget. There's no proposed budget. There's no expenditures that have been identified. This is a presentation to give us a concept, to engage the community in a planning project, and then come back to us for consideration. And you're certainly going to have every opportunity to address that from the table. But I think you're a little premature in pointing out what you consider basic flaws in a plan, and there is no plan. Something I was going to point out too is all the art in this building was done on a percentage basis. And that was not necessarily a mandate, but it was part of the granting money that we got from the federal government to do this building, that there would be dollars spent for art in the building. And that was funded as part of a grant. That didn't come out of the town's budget. And we've got some incredible art. In fact, people who come through the city hall say, I didn't know your city hall was an art museum. So I'm very impressed with this starting point. And I think pulling the community together in a steering group and having the conversation and, brainstorming, whatever, to bring something forward to enrich our community, I'm all for it, And it's exciting, some of the stuff that's coming here tonight. Mr. McCarthy?
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you both for this. Exciting progress. I think having participated in a number of those planning efforts, 2040 and comprehensive plan, and hearing from the mouths of our citizens some of the things that you had echoed tonight, and what's just happened in our community in the last 18 to 24 months, it's really demonstrated how much our community values art. I don't think there's any question of that. And some of the programs that we've talked about tonight, and certainly the Sugar Creek Arts Festival is a fan favorite here. And I don't know if any one of us have ever walked around the street during that and haven't been approached by citizens thanking us for supporting that kind of cultural activity in our community. This is all around us, whether we formalize this or not. Public art is here, and it's an economic driver, and it gives us enjoyable places that people feel comfortable. They want to hang out. One of the phrases from the 2040 vision was great places people love to be. And that's certainly Uptown Normal. And with some additional investments, will continue to be some of the rest of the parts from some of your examples. A couple of comments on it, and then a couple of clarifications. One, I appreciate that this starts to begin to try to define a scope of what a public art plan is and how we go about that. I think this will help us be declarative in terms of where we're interested in, and help us to sort out and our publics, and also define collaborative partners to not only get public input, but who can help guide us, and who can also come to that third rail, which is funding. Help introduce us to potential patrons, potential artists who want to donate, assuming that they believe that we're serious in our willingness to invest and protect and curate good public art installations here. Of course, I appreciate that there's a robust discussion about funding options. That's our role up here, is to do that and be that public and grant. You've been very, very successful in going after grants, and clearly you've already been investigating agencies and organizations who do grant funding, and I know you'll continue down that path, and we will all appreciate your continued success there, should you be able to.
All of that works easier if we have a plan.
Correct. And so certainly I love the approach that there's a committee of various stakeholders in our community coming together to have a conversation about public art, and that it isn't just internally generated, that it's publicly generated. Because after all, the plans that you referenced were all citizen generated, all citizen driven plans, and clearly they've let their voices be heard. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this evolves as a community conversation, as a steering committee, as the ideas float to you, then to us, and then flows to some potential ideas of, okay, we've heard this one or two or three things, and that will cost X, and then we will have to start to make some funding decisions, and you'll look at grant opportunities, and then eventually we'll get to that conversation. But I know tonight we're just at the concept phase. There seems to be a little confusion about 1% type or percentage type approaches for funding art. Those aren't taxes. They can come from grants. They can come from a variety of funding sources. But to clear up for the media or anybody's paying attention, that isn't a tax. That's not how that actually works. It's a percentage of a project that's devoted to investing in public art. How that's funded can be a variety of ways. So let's try to make sure we don't get that confused in the public's eye at all. I'm looking forward to the next step. I'm assuming we're going to move forward on the steering committee and starting to get input on this as a progress, and then you'll come back to us with ideas and more specifics, and then we'll have to make some hard decisions up here about how we go about funding options and what we have available publicly versus private versus grant dollars. So I appreciate it, and I look forward to it.
Thank you for start here.
Yeah.
Let's see where this takes us.
The centennial of Route 66 is coming up very soon. It happens to coincide with the whatever the word is for the next level birthday party for the United States on this same summer, and that is something that is in the report, if you notice. So another economic sector of tourism and culture coming together, and art, specifically artistic gateways, are very much a part of the Route 66 travel experience and draw, and they were very, very busy during COVID, bringing people through in those passive ways to enjoy art, and we certainly could use some of that in this community too. So and that has lots of partnership and funding opportunities. So just wanted to highlight that.
Great. Thank you. Before we go to concerns and adjournment, I just wanted to make a quick statement. I probably should have caught it earlier, but I have been cautioned by staff that when we recuse ourselves from voting on an item, we should identify why we're doing that.
Okay, I can go ahead and identify that. I apologize. I had to recuse myself from voting tonight on the two items for Heartland Community College because I am a part-time staffer at Heartland Community College.
Thank you. Concerns, comments? Ms. Lorenz?
Thank you. I want to take this time to give a little attention to a very new but very exciting publication called the BN Residence Guide. You can get your copy through the McLean County Chamber, but as I understand from their CEO, they are, as I speak, deploying these throughout the community. why you say, do we need a residence guide? Well, we have a lot of new people coming to our community, and we want to be welcoming to them, and we want to let them know things to do, maybe art spaces to go view. And so I just really thought, when I was at the chamber today, I happened to see it sitting on a table, and I said, can I take this? And he said, yeah. And I said I was going to give it a little commercial tonight. So here it is. Welcome to BN, it says, Bloomington Normal and Surrounding Cities Residence Guide. It was a collaborative effort between the Chamber, EDC, the Pantograph, and numerous businesses who supplied advertisements. Things in it include everything from places to eat, things to do, and on page 2 or 3, right at the beginning here, it talks about the vibe, artsy and historic, and hip and collegiate. So kind of carrying on that theme of art. So that and many more. I mean, things from healthcare to daycares to, just various other things that you need to know when you move to a new community. And right there in the middle of it is our very own Normal Theater and a front picture of a Rivian truck. So kudos to those who put it together, and just wanted to give it a little shout out. Thank you.
Ms. Cummings?
Sure.
And then-
Thank you, Mayor. Couple things that I wanted to mention tonight. The first thing was the Central Illinois chapter of the Lynx is raising awareness on chronic kidney disease. And I'm always about engaging and encouraging our community to be healthier. So wanted to certainly share the work that they're doing within our community. And especially as we talk more about chronic kidney disease, it impacts 35% of African Americans in the United States. And so they have a website where you can go and get more information about chronic kidney disease, but also sign up program pledge. They are working with a group called Black Care, which is Kidney Awareness Resources and Education. The website is CIC links-black care with a K, so black KARE.info. Once again, that's CIC links-BLACKKARE.info. So hopefully many of you will go out, learn about what chronic kidney disease is and how it impacts our community, and also possibly sign the pledge. Also coming up with something that's always been near and dear to my heart since its inception is A Night in the Car. It's coming back in support of Home Sweet Home Ministries. It will be on Friday, February 4th. So certainly if you're not going to spend the night in the car, be supportive of those who will in order to raise money for Home Sweet Home Ministries, but also to bring awareness to homelessness in our communities. Last but not least, certainly want to as we celebrated the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on last Saturday. That was his actual birth date. Observed it yesterday. We gave awards honoring those who have lived a life or trying to leave somewhat of a similar legacy within our community. Congratulations to those honorees in the town of Normal. But always be mindful as a community. We often can easily recite and quote phrases from his I Have a Dream speech, but we leave out the thoughts beyond just that and the many bodies of work collectively and what that meant as us being a community and a group of humanitarians who care more about the person individually versus picking them apart for other reasons and ideologies, but taking the time to get to know a person and being able to show compassion and care as them being your neighbor. So I hope we can all continue to be reflective of that, not just enjoy the day off that many of you had yesterday. And those are my comments for this evening.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
I wanted to give notice about this because the event happens before our next council meeting, but in this week's Veterans Corner it was noted that on February 3rd, there will be a ceremony to honor the 4 chaplains who gave up their life jackets to strangers and sacrificed their own lives to save others as a ship was being sunk. And their sacrifice of working together, thinking of others first, is something definitely to be honored, and the local veterans community will have that ceremony on February 3rd at the McLean County Courthouse. Thank you.
Mr. Nord?
Thank you. One of my concerns is it surprises me that no one wants to know what happens if this council was misled to spend tax dollars. That really surprises me, and I think we should be more concerned about that. The job of the legal department, per the municipal code, I'll just read one sentence. The corporation council shall be the legal advisor to the town and shall render advice on all legal questions affecting the town whenever requested to do so by any town official, by any of us. So, Mr. Mayor, for you to instruct the town attorney not to answer my question violates our own town code. So, you know, we need to either change the code or start following the code. So that was my one concern. Another concern that I have is we were all elected to be stewards of the town, and we took an oath to support the U.S. Constitution and the Constitution of the state of Illinois. And it's come to my attention that some municipal staff, in some of their separation agreements, this is not all separation agreements, but there's language in there that says, I will not at any time disparage or denigrate the town orally or in writing. I will not, there's another one, another version of it. But anyway, there's these clauses that are in select agreements when someone's let go, and not all town staff, that they cannot speak critically of the town. And I think this violates the First Amendment right of free speech, because I think when town employees, once you leave employment, you should not have your free speech abridged because we've paid you for your silence. I mean, you guys are the ones that are on the inside and know really what's going on. There was a PBS article, or a PBS show, that said that the courts have said that the First Amendment rights of government employees that they possess post-employment cannot be contractually given away. So we as a council, we're using government tax dollars to silence people. And, that's wrong. I think that's a clear violation. Another article, this was something that the Missouri State Auditor said, that by having these, they can hide long-term festering problems that often result in more lawsuits and greater cost to taxpayers. We shouldn't have things that are going to prevent people from whistleblowing and things. And as elected officials that took that oath, it's incumbent on us to actually stand up for it, because if a lawsuit comes to the town, we're all going to be listed individually on there for that. And I don't want it to come back that, hey, I was informed this was going on. And this isn't like a boilerplate template. This is select people that have been targeted. That, I don't want it to come back that I didn't say anything. Now it's incumbent on us to decide what we want to do about that. Ideally, I would like to see these contracts null and void. And I personally do not want to see any tax dollars spent retaliating against someone that may have spoke critically against the town. So, thank you.
Mr. Preston?
Thanks. At our last meeting, we talked about the National Fitness Campaign and authorizing participation. As part of that conversation, I sought clarity on the non-for-profit versus for-profit status of that organization.
Can you use your microphone, please? There, thanks.
Sorry. Do I need to start over? At our last meeting, we talked about the National Fitness Campaign and the town's participation in that. As part of that conversation, excuse me, as part of that conversation, I had sought clarity on the for-profit versus not-for-profit status of that organization. That was something that I sought clarity about. One, because it wasn't clear to me from the packet of information. Two, it mattered a great deal in how I viewed that information and how I looked at that issue as a result. So to pick up on a conversation that I initiated briefly in the minutes, Mr. Day, if the appropriate action is to have a motion to rescind or to revisit that vote, can you please remind me what procedurally how that process works?
I think that's an inappropriate question for concerns. I would take that up with Mr. Day after the meeting. We certainly heard your concern, and we'll address that concern. Don't worry about that, Mr. Scott. But I don't, or Mr. Preston, I don't think we should have a discussion during concerns.
Okay, thanks.
I think what is being lost is Mr. Day's.
Ms. Smith, we're not going to have these discussions in concerns. We're going to stick to our agenda tonight. Further comments or concerns? Motion for adjournment, please.
So moved.
Oh, you always catch me. You always wait till I call for adjournment, and then you raise your hand.
My finger up. Thank you, Mayor. I'm not going to ask any questions of anybody. I'm just going to reflect a little bit. There's been some words thrown around, misled, one of them, and some other language that's been thrown around. I encourage everybody to go watch the actual video rather than expressed opinions, to see the words that were actually used, I suppose, and that what will be clear to you if you do invest the time to go actually watch the video footage is that there was a sincere attempt to ask or to answer questions posed to staff, that there was no intentionality behind misleading or any other of the salacious words that have been thrown around. It's unfortunate that we have someone trying to cast dispersion about this when the public evidence is so clear. Just go watch the video. You'll get a clear picture of the situation. Certainly, if there's issues to revisit, then we should revisit them. And I have no qualms about that whatsoever. But I do want to posit a really just somewhat confusing stance. We have very strong emotions being presented here about how something happened and about a piece of information, and that it's so pivotal and so important. If it was so important and so pivotal, why was the question only asked during the meeting? If we are doing our jobs of thoroughly vetting issues, thoroughly vetting information before we ever come to the table to get a vote, why aren't we asking the questions ahead of time before coming to council? Why aren't we giving staff plenty of opportunity to investigate our questions before we get to the table? Why aren't we doing our own homework to find out answers that are pivotal to us before we get to the table? I'm confused by why we're making such a big deal about this one thing when everybody had ample opportunity, when everybody had ample opportunity to ask the questions ahead of time, if they were confused. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody particular up here. I'm just always confused when we take this approach that there was one thing that was so important, but we waited to the last second to ask it and then tried to blow up a meeting about it. I think that's bad form. I think that that means that we as a body, as a group, and I do mean we, I'm not, again, not pointing my finger at anybody particular, but we as a body are not doing our jobs if we're not coming to the table informed with the information we need to know. And we're not asking staff ahead of time so they can be prepared to answer our questions if we need to ask those questions in public. Thanks.
Motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Please call the roll.
Mr. Nord,
No.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Ms. Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Ms. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. We are adjourned.